Hi guys, my name is Shane Cashin, and you are watching Tennis Ninja TV. Aloha again, tennis fans. Welcome to Tennis Ninja TV. I am again your host, Shane Cashin, and you are here at the second interview. And if you're wondering, no, I'm not actually at the courts, although I am wearing a hat saluting the Hawaii Open, our pro event. You know, if you are the type who likes gear and stringing and specs with rackets and just equipment, you are in for a treat today, guys. I've got a special guest who has vast experience in this. Without further ado, guys, I would like to present my guest today, Albert Murata. Albert, welcome to Tennis Ninja TV.
Hey, Shane. Hey, Hawaii.
So Albert, I got to start with you, man, the same way I asked Kyle the other day. We're all on this quarantine thing, and we're all tennis coaches who are on pause really at the moment. So, but I understood that you've been keeping busy the last couple of weeks, still doing tennis related stuff. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's kind of odd being off the court, being, so used to being on the court teaching, playing. Uh, but I've been pretty busy, like you said, mainly working on a website that I finally was able to create. Yeah, this is a work in progress, but it's really never going to end. In fact, I'm having fun doing it. It's a lot of work, but after I put the website together, I'm starting to realize I do kind of a lot of things. So when you go to my website, I have it on my screen over there. Go to my story first. That'll kind of give you an idea of what I've done the last 40 years as a player, stringer, uh, an instructor, and a retailer. So, and I got some practice videos on there. So it's kind of weird to actually see myself doing these videos. And anyway, it was mainly designed for my current students to keep them connected and stay active during these stay-at-home times. So as far as looking forward to this summer, we don't know if we're going to get back on the court. So that's kind of a question mark. So I'm already planning this online summer camp. I'm working with a pretty well-known online tennis instructor, Peter Freeman. And we're already planning to have this online summer camp. And, parents, they're kind of uncertain too in these times. And, they don't want their kids to be at home watching Netflix, video games, and just going to the fridge. So what Peter Freeman is doing, and we're doing this as we speak, is he's putting together a bunch of courses, not only tennis, but 11 other activities and sports like basketball, soccer, cooking, hip hop dancing. I might even try that. Being at home, you don't get that social experience, but what's unique about this is that the students can send in videos after they complete a lesson, and the coach or instructor will comment and give tips based on that video and give immediate feedback. So you get, individual attention. Obviously, I'm trying to promote it. This is kind of like my plug here, but if there's coaches out there that want to become an affiliate, I can get you guys involved too. So, I think yeah, this is a good time for this kind of thing to happen, especially if we don't get back on the court. So, yeah, so that's it. That's been keeping me busy.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Albert. It sounds like you've definitely been a busy bee the last few weeks. And I'll include a link in the description down below to his website if you guys want to check that out. And through that, you can navigate to find all the tennis teaching that he's actually putting together. Not many people may know your actual roots as a Hawaii junior. So could you tell us a little bit about the highlights you've had there?
All right. Well, I'll be aging myself here. So I started when I was 14. And growing up in the 60s, tennis was considered a sissy sport back then. I mean, there was basketball, baseball, football, and that's pretty much the three sports you could play. I did baseball, basketball. I always wanted to play football, but I just wasn't big enough. So anyway, once I started tennis, I really got hooked on it, and I quit my other sports, baseball and basketball. Eventually, I played for Konawaina High School, and I guess the highlight was on my junior year. We won the BIIF doubles, and that was the first time Konawaina actually won a title. So that was pretty much that was a highlight. as far as playing tournaments, I think the highest I was ranked was 12 in the state for singles, and second in doubles. But back then, if you play with the same partner all the time, you get high ranking in doubles. So yeah, so that's how we got that second in doubles. And then when I went to I attended at Manoa. I majored in architecture, and by that point, I got burnt out, and I realized going to college and just making the adjustment, playing tennis was really not. I just didn't have time, and currently I still play in various leagues, and it's kind of funny because I'm actually playing more now because when you reach a certain age, 55 and over, you can actually play in all the leagues and all year round. So that's pretty much my playing experience.
Awesome. I want to branch off into stringing, which is considered your specialty down here. I know that you are affiliated with the USRSA and you've had vast experience. Could you go ahead and share with us how you got started in stringing and racket personalization?
All right. So when I first started tennis at age 14, right from the start, I was always intrigued with how rackets were strung. And at age 15, I got my first job stringing rackets. The local tennis pro took me under his wing, showed me how to string, and so I worked for Nuke Plus One tennis shop in at the King Kamehameha Hotel. And after I graduated from high school, I went to UH, and while I was there, I got a job at McCully Bicycle and was stringing there. And that was a good experience because back then McCully Bike was the place to get rackets. And, and I wasn't the only stringer, and we would go every day and string at least 10 rackets each. Then eventually in 85, I became the director of tennis at Wiley 85, where I'm still presently teaching at. That first year that I started there, actually, I strung at my first pro tournament. There was a $10,000 women's tournament sponsored by Gentry, the developer, and we had a pro tournament there. And anyway, that's one of the pictures you probably saw at my shop. It was like, yeah, back then. In 91, I did the Nissan circuit. That was an annual event. 92, the Davis Cup, when the U.S. played Argentina at Manalani. 94, the Hawaii Open. That was at Turtle Bay that Wayne Ferreira won that year. But during those years that I was stringing, it was always a goal of mine to string at the U.S. Open. And finally, in 94, I got my break. I was invited to string at the U.S. Open with Team Babolat. And there were 14 stringers in our team, and that was quite an experience. And, as much as I was trying to become a stringer at the U.S. Open, it was the next year when they invited me back that kind of validated that actually I knew what I was doing. So that was actually very gratifying to me. And since then, I've been doing all the Challenger events, the ones that were back at Waikoloa, then it moved to Maui and Oahu, and just been stringing since then. And, up until the last event that we did, the Davis Cup.
Awesome. You've clearly moved your way up in that world. And it's pretty cool to see that you eventually even got to the U.S. Open, which is one of the 4 biggest tennis tournaments there is. It's a Grand Slam. And you not only got to go once, but twice. And that must have been such an experience. Could you share a little bit about us with that in particular?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, there were 14 stringers. 2 of them came from France. They were sent by Babolat, and one of them was a personal stringer for Pete Sampras. So we could never touch Pete Sampras's rackets back then, but we got all the other players that dropped off rackets. So the way it worked was when we get a racket for a player for the very first time, the next time that same player brings back a racket, they'll keep sending those same rackets to us. So the machine and the stringer was always the same whenever they dropped off rackets. And, that was the first time I realized that these players are pretty particular about how fresh the strings are. Some players would string up 6 rackets just for one match, and sometimes they won't even use the 4th, 5th, and 6th racket and still want it restrung the next day. So, and you learn a lot. I've learned a lot from that experience, and learned some techniques, and yeah, so that was great.
Is there anything that stood out to you that stringing wise at a pro event that you've been applying to your current stringing for recreational players? Or is there anything recreational players you think should know that's different from what the pros do?
The pros, like I said, they want fresh strings, so that's not realistic for most recreational players. Uh, for myself, though, it made me kind of more picky about having fresh strings, and but I think it's important that players are educated about the importance of having strings that are not so dead that you're waiting for it to break. Uh, I treat every racket the same, whether it's a recreational player or a pro. It's just my thing. I just feel like when I finish a racket, a part of me goes out to the court with you. So, I just want to contribute wherever I can and do the best I can.
That's pretty cool, man. What you got going on with AM stringing is pretty unique to this island and the state, really. Not many people may know about how to personalize a tennis racket and customize a tennis racket. Could you go over a few highlights on the services you provide with AM stringing there?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's a good thing I set up this website, because whatever I don't forget to cover here, you can just go to my website and it'll have all the information there. But I think it's important when players have two or more rackets that they understand that matching the racket specs are really important, because some players will have a favorite racket and never know why. And it's usually due to the swing weight of a racket. Each manufacturer has a what do you call the tolerance for how much they can vary their specs, because not every racket is going to come out of the manufacturing process exactly alike. So that's what I do. I can match them up perfectly, so you never have a favorite racket, really. But then you don't have an excuse why you lost. So I don't know if that's a good thing. As far as personalizing the specs, some players that I work with actually know what specs they want, the actual weight, the swing weight. So that's something that I do, and a lot of it is just uh, I enjoy doing that stuff. So yeah, so bring it on.
That's awesome, man. If you guys don't know where to go and you're looking for little details like this to really spec your rackets out and learn a lot about stringing, you can visit Albert Murata at amstringing.com, or you can go to his actual shop located at the Wiley EQ5 tennis complex. Now, this question, I'm sure people out there are going to be always wondering, just because, when you go to a tennis shop or even your shop, and I, for example, see a racket that my favorite pro is using, and I want that racket. What is the real difference between a professional player's racket and your average racket you find in a shop? Is there a difference?
Oh yeah, I mean, the rackets that you see the pros are playing with, they sometimes will it'll be a different racket with the cosmetics of the particular racket that they're supposed to endorse. So that, yeah, I've seen some of those actually in the challenger events. But in general, a lot of the players, a lot of the touring pros have their rackets all specced out. Some of them have them custom made, the grips and everything. And yeah, so what you see out there on the court with the pros are not exactly what you would be buying off the rack. So
Yeah, that's a big one. I know a lot of players would be wondering, just because, and especially kids, if they see, Roger Federer's racket, for example, on the shelf, they may want to get that racket because they see their favorite player using it. Sometimes parents end up buying a kid a racket, and then they come to a coach or like yourself, and they actually are advised to then switch and choose a different frame based on their age, their level, and all that. And they may not always know details like that. Albert has actually been starting a kind of a Prince crew of coaches. And could you explain a little bit about that and your history with Prince?
sure. As the first Prince racket, this is a trivia question. What was the name of the first Prince racket that was made in 1977? Do you
Oh,
know?
oh gosh, now the interview's on me. It's not the Prince Classic, is it?
Yeah, it's a Prince
Oh,
Classic.
it is. Oh, 100
Yeah.
points for Shane.
So that was the first oversized racket. It was an aluminum racket. It was the one with the green yoke piece. And anyway, ever since that first racket came out, I used it. And at first, it seemed like you were cheating if you're using such a big racket compared to those wooden rackets that we grew up with. But eventually it caught on. And as you know, some of the players that started to use it, Agassi started with Prince, Michael Chang, of course. So there are a lot of pros that eventually use the Prince Graphite, eventually though. Uh, but I've been loyal since '77, really, and just been ever since my retail business. Just had the opportunity to promote it even more. Um, so that's how my retail goes. But as far as Prince Team Hawaii, it started about a couple years ago, and basically there's two components. One, there's a junior player component and the pros and coaches component. So, and it's on my website. So now anyone can view it. And basically what I'm looking for in junior players is five things. One, a junior that can compete with a positive and competitive attitude. Two, they have to display good sportsmanship, of course. Three, they have to have a sectional ranking because I want to make sure that these kids are serious about tennis and at least playing in these tournaments. Number four is you want to make sure they're maintaining good grades. So we're looking for players that are not only good on the court, but off the court. And then five is they have to get a coach's recommendation to verify their competitiveness, positive attitude, sportsmanship. So the pros and coaches, that's anyone that's currently certified by PTR or USPTA, or if not that, teaching at any of the USTA programs, or high school coaches. So yeah, it's on the website. You can take a look at it and yeah, have all the details there.
Awesome. I'll include a link in the description as well to that down below so you guys can check that out if you want. Again, it's called Prince Team Hawaii. It is a group of coaches and junior players that are, they receive some gear and some help from Albert and Prince. I've been blessed enough, thank you Albert, for being hooked up with Prince, and I can attest to, the quality of their gear. Although a lot of people have been, hearing the stories over the years that Prince kind of, was this huge company back in its day, and now it's kind of, you don't hear very much about them anymore. So can you tell us about what exactly is going on with Prince? Are they still around?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I've heard those stories too, and it started around 2017 when the new owners at the time decided that they're gonna take a different marketing strategy, and so that's when they eventually let go the local reps, and there was no local dealers really, and for about 6 months or so, I didn't have any affiliation with them, but I stayed in touch. And later that year, I was reinstated as a dealer. Yes, I'm just glad to be back on board with Prince because, uh, yeah, I that's my roots. So
Awesome. It's good to hear that Prince is alive and kicking and on their way back, which is, one big reason in particular. I even joined on board with Prince, and I'm excited for what they've got in store for the future. I want to segment into what you're doing now, Albert, and particularly with junior team tennis, the USTA League for Kids, and your tennis program, Wailaiki 5. And could you share a little bit about your junior tennis program, what you've been doing for Hawaii tennis in that regard to not only stay active but to make a difference in kids, and your affiliation with the USTA helping run the JTT?
so my junior program, I have about 50 to 60 kids, and it's all year round, and it's a junior development program from red to yellow ball. And of course, JTT is where the kids eventually want to get to, or at least that's the goal, right? To get them to stay, to get competitive. And so I think with junior team tennis, it was just natural that when um, the coordinator at the time was not going to be it anymore, that I just stepped in. And that was in 1989. And in 89, it wasn't a USTA program yet. It was still the Honolulu Junior Tennis League. And in that year, Bob Keanui and I took it on. And then in 1990, USTA decided to make a national program for junior team tennis. So I've been doing the junior team tennis program since 1990.
Albert, could you explain what JTT is? And to, let's say, if you were coaching a new parent for the first time and the kid just getting into tennis, what exactly is JTT, and how would it benefit a young kid, and how can a kid get in started in JTT?
Yeah, junior team tennis is for kids starting from age 9 all the way up till they graduate in high school. There's right now there's 10 different levels, starting at a 2.5, 12 and under league, which is actually a green ball level. And then it goes up from there to the 14 and under, and then it goes right up to 18s. And then within each age group, there is different skill levels. So in the last 3 years, I think they implemented a junior rating. So similar to the adult league, once you get into the system, well, first of all, you self-rate, and then once you get into the system, all your match results become computer generated, and then you get a rating based on the matches that you play. And yeah, I think JTT is just a fun way for kids that normally don't get to play with other kids on the team format to hang out, play, and just yeah, the social aspect, I think, is really the fun part about it.
How would a kid get involved in playing JTT? Like, would they have to find a program like yours in order to find a team like this? How can a kid get started?
Well, you can go to the USTA website and look for junior team tennis. I also have a link on my website that you can just go to directly, and you can inquire there, or you could just inquire at the USTA Hawaii Pacific office, and usually they'll send it to me, and then I'll try to refer them out to teams that are in their neighborhood. There are teams from East Honolulu all the way to Mililani, North Shore, and Windward, of course. So yeah, it's island wide, and they have outer islands too. So
That's awesome. Yeah, if I highly recommend it, as I have been a JTT player as a young junior myself. I played for a program in Kaneohe called Bob's Mob, and junior team tennis is a very special experience, guys. If you're a parent who has a kid who's wanting to get into tennis, or you are a kid yourself and you're watching this, and you play tennis, if you don't do it, I would highly recommend playing junior team tennis. It is a cool experience to meet so many people along the way, which I still have friends from my team now, and I'm 29 years old, and I still talk to these guys and play tennis with some of them. So it's definitely a cool experience. I think it'd be a great question for you to answer, is that there are those particular groups of kids that are considered high performance level tennis players, and their main focus really is playing a lot of tournaments. But do you recommend playing something like JTT, maybe even alongside playing tournaments, in order to get the team aspect? Or should a upcoming player like that focus on just playing tournaments or just JTT?
yeah, that kind of depends on the coach, I think, that the player is working with. Some embrace the JTT concept of having them enjoy the game really off and not have the pressure of producing results in a tournament format. Um, so it kind of, I think a lot of it depends on the coach. Some, yeah, parents will um, have strong feelings about that. But again, it's kind of neat when in JTT you could have kids that are from different schools that normally the high schools that would compete against each other, and you see them on the court playing together, and then mixed doubles. I mean, you don't get to play mixed doubles in high school, and yeah, and it's all the stuff that you do after, like the potlucks and just getting to experience that aspect of it. So it's competition. It's low key, but it gives them an outlet, I think, and that's what I think a lot of it is what JTT is about.
This is definitely something we can't miss because this is Albert Murata. We can't go anywhere without talking about your two sons, Raiden and Colby. Shout out to you guys if you're watching. Um, what's it been like raising two kids who went through the junior tennis system and are now playing college, actually?
Yeah, I think they're one of the last juniors that got to experience rally ball. I know Kyle on the interview the other day mentioned rally ball. And if you never played rally ball, it was still using the yellow ball, but you would get points for every time you hit the ball over the net in the court. And that's how points are scored. Uh, so they played rally ball. They played orange and then green all the way to yellow, obviously. And they played at Kalani High School. And when Raiden was a senior and Kobe was a sophomore, they started playing doubles together. And yeah, they that was their last year playing together, and that was a highlight, I think, of their tennis in high school, where they placed fourth at state. Eventually, Raiden went on to college at Pacific University, and Kobe followed a couple of years after. And there's a lot of Hawaii guys on that Pacific team. I don't know if you know. There's Ren Miyagawa, Joey Hu, and so they make up about a fourth of the team, really. But yeah, and they play night doubles. They always see that like the showcase of their summer, and it's never. I'll watch their match, and you see me over there if you ever seen me. I'm pretty calm on the outside, but I'm thinking all the things you probably are thinking, or any parent. But I think I do a better job of not showing it. So what I do is I usually keep stats to keep my mind just not racing all over the place. I have to concentrate on keeping good stats.
As their parent, did you, and considering you coach too the game, um, did you ever get involved with coaching your kids throughout their tennis journey, or did you let them go at one point and let them go on their own journey?
Yeah, they did start with me. Obviously, they would come up with me to the courts whenever I was teaching when they were really young. And then when they're old enough to hold a racket, they started, but I never really forced it on them. I wanted them to want it themselves. So, but eventually, they took tennis as a sport. They played basketball and soccer, other sports, flag football. But tennis eventually became their sport, and um, yeah, so I coached them until they were about pre-teenage. And if you don't have kids, that's the age that they kind of have their own idea about how things should be done. So I kind of had to let them go, and they were playing for other teams. In their later part of their high school journey, uh, they started to realize that I'm actually a coach that kind of knows what I'm doing. So they actually took more advice from me, and we're really working hard on those last 2 years there during the run at the high school state champs. And sometimes as a parent, it's hard, especially if you're a coach. In my case, I just wanted them to want it, and yeah, they've come a long way, and I'm really proud of them.
Right on. It sounds like you've been a wonderful father to them, as well as a mentor to look up to and be raised in life. And guys, Raiden and Colby, if you're watching, again, guys, that's pretty cool. Your dad says that, and I've had a pleasure of watching those two as well grow up. And I even, when I coached for Castle High School at one point on the varsity team, I coached against those two boys in both soft tennis and tennis. If you ever want to watch them play, go out to one of the men's night doubles events in Hawaii in the summer when we get hopefully that going on again. They're very they play a style of doubles that you can learn a lot from, and is very inspiring to watch. Um, and Albert, that brings us to the last segment really of this video interview, and that is the Q&A. So Albert, I've got at least 3 questions here for you. We'll start off with this first one that I have, and that is if you could pick one thing, stringing or racket personalization wise, so info, what would you tell a recreational player? What would you want them to know?
I think it's important that the equipment that they use is always appropriate for the level, the skill level, and what where they're at in their game. So, and the stringing, I mean, that's the engine that runs the racket. So it's so important to know what to have in your racket. And even if you demo a racket, it's important that you demo the racket with the right setup. So that's my big thing. When I let a customer use a demo, I'll make sure that the strings are fresh and it's gonna be played the way it should be played. So that's kind of my motto: let your strings play. But anyway, that's really important.
Awesome. My second question is, what is the biggest thing you've learned as a professional stringer working at the pro events that you've been to? Is there anything that you've really stood out where you were like, whoa, I didn't know that, but that's cool now?
Yeah, of course. When I was stringing at the U.S. Open, since there was a team of us, it was an opportunity for me to learn different styles of stringing. I picked up some tips there, but a lot of it I think I learned on my own doing these challenger events. And it's not for everybody. You might think it's like, oh yeah, you're stringing for, Nishikori, or you're stringing for Isner, or those guys that are, you see on TV. But it's kind of stressful. I mean, you just gotta be really consistent. I think stringing fast is important, but consistency is a key. And then you have to be able to endure long hours of stringing. So, I mean, I strung 21 and a half hours straight one day, and then I had an hour and a half sleep, and then I had to string another 18 hours the next day. So it's not like, yeah, it's pretty tough. So, but it's fun.
If push came to shove and quality wasn't necessarily the issue, what's the fastest you've ever strung a tennis racket?
uh, all right. It has to be a certain racket that has, the racket that I strung had 14 mains and 18 crosses. So obviously there's less strings, so less time. And again, quality didn't matter, right? You could just whip right through it. I did have to pull one string at a time. So it was 9 minutes.
Oh man, that is crazy fast.
Yeah, of course I won't be doing that to any of my customer rackets, but yeah. So
That's crazy. Wow. So guys, you hear that? If you're in the middle of a tournament, Albert happens to be stringing at the event. If you really need a racket that bad and quality doesn't matter like that, he can have it done. Anyway, my last question I have for you today, Albert, is this. Um, and this is custom built question for you, by the way. What is your favorite Prince tennis racket of all time that you've ever used?
Prince Woody.
Prince Woody. Oh, that's a classic right there,
Yeah,
man.
without a doubt.
What makes that racket stand out to you? And so what makes it so memorable?
Well, I start off with a wood racket. So, the wood racket, there's so much to be admired in a wood racket, the craftsmanship. And, uh, it was just back in the old days that, I mean, not many people see those rackets. But when the first Prince Classic came along, it was aluminum. Then they eventually they turned it into, they had a graphite, Prince Graphite. But when that Woody came out, it was like, oh, it was like the marriage of both the old and the new. So I was like, yeah. So I have one hanging up in my shop if you ever want to see one, or you could Google it and see what it looks like. But it's a nice racket.
That's awesome, man. Albert, is there any closing thoughts you have on this interview and anything you'd like to say to the Hawaii tennis community right now?
Tennis, to me, is, of course, it's a lifelong sport, but it really is a sport that you can excel as a player and as a person. And I'll share two stories, and I was saving this for last. But some people will ask me, like, how has tennis impacted your life? Well, there's two things. One, people would think, okay, so there's a good experience and a not so good experience, and I learned from both of them. The good one was when I was playing in a junior tournament. I was 14. It was at Wailea, and at the time I was, just a kind of up and coming junior player. And so I showed up at the tournament desk. I checked in, and the director said, "Your opponent's not here yet." And I knew I had to play the fourth seeded player, so I said, "Okay, I'll just wait." And then 15 minutes went by, I'm not sure how much after 15 minutes, maybe a half an hour or so. And the tournament director said, okay, we're going to just default your match. And then eventually he showed up. And I just told him, hey, I just want to play this guy. I don't want to take a default. So, of course, being the fourth seeded player, I just figured, okay, I just do the best I can and see what happens. So I eventually beat him. I mean, that was my first big win
Wow.
as a junior. Yeah. So obviously I was happy. I made it to the semis, eventually lost there. But at the end of the tournament, they had a special award for sportsmanship. And, well, I received that award. And he said a little bit about what happened, why he thought I deserved it. And to this day, I'll tell that story to my juniors that, receiving a sportsmanship award is a big thing. And once you receive an award like that, then you're a good sport for life. The second experience was not so good, but I learned from it. And when I told you about my high school playing days, I didn't tell you about my senior year. And not many people know this, and I'm not too proud about sharing this, but I will. So my senior year, being the number one player on the Kona Wina team, I was a team captain. I thought I knew it all. I mean, the coach was an elementary math school teacher, and he was like a 3-5 player or so. But being a teen year at the time, I thought I knew everything, and we went on a road trip to Honoka'a on the bus from Kona. And then a bunch of us were in the back of the bus, and we were playing cards. And he didn't like the fact that we're playing cards. There were a little bit of gambling going on back there, but he told us to stop basically. And but we stopped, and then we've just brought out another deck of cards, and we started playing. And he was not happy with that. So anyway, when we reached Honoka'a, he said, "You 5 guys, you're not playing today." So I said, "Oh, okay, all right." And then when we got back to Kona, the next practice, he said, "You guys are not on the team. You're indefinitely suspended." And I didn't know what that meant. He just said that you guys can't be playing right now. You're for insubordination. And I didn't know what that meant either. But eventually, he just stuck with it. I mean, I apologized. But I guess he wanted to set a good example for his other players, because he saw me as kind of like a rebel. And so obviously that was my senior year. I never got to play BIIF or states, and that was a year I was hoping to do something really with my partner. So it took me a while to get over that experience. I forgive what he did, and I'm really sorry for what I did, really. But I told my boys that now I'm getting kind of teary. So no matter who your coach is, whether you think they know it all or they don't, you really got to respect your coach. I mean, they're in a position where, they're trying to help you. So just remember that, you always got to respect your coach. So anyway, I get so emotional when I talk about that, because yeah, that was a lesson learned, definitely.
Wow, Albert, thank you so much for sharing that, man. I'm really honored that you can be so open about that. And I'm telling you right now, man, the Hawaii tennis community, you may not see them right now, but I'm sure they are definitely thanking you, man, for just being real humble and just being very real, and I really relate to what Albert said about sportsmanship, that, people don't remember necessarily how much you won in the game, but they definitely remember how you played the game. And sportsmanship is huge in the sport of tennis, and it's a big growing factor as well. You can learn a lot, and that's what people I would think would want to remember you for. So I hope that's a tip for someone out there today. If you're a junior out there and you live on that side of the island in the Hawaii Kai Kahala district of Oahu, Wailaiki 5 with Coach Albert, guys, it's a great program. I recommend you check that out. And where can they find you on that if they want to play for you, man?
Go to my website.
Simple as that, man. Again, big thanks to my guest, Albert Murata, for coming down and joining us. And, again, if you have any other questions for him, man, regardless about stringing, tennis equipment, or even Wailaiki junior tennis, any NJTT, go ahead and hit his website up, AM Stringing. I will include a link down here in the description, guys, for you, and a link to anywhere else that he mentioned earlier with Prince. And we want to hook you guys up, man. We want to make tennis more accessible, and that's what this channel is all about. So, but again, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We hope to see you on the next episode of Tennis Ninja TV. God bless, stay safe, and aloha.